Hello again. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for Everyman IT, and today's class is User Account Security Theory. So you may hear that name and you may wonder why I am going to waste 30 minutes talking about user account security. It seems pretty simple. You have a username, you have a password. That's a theory. That's all there is to talk about. You may understand that there's a little bit of password complexity. You can make passwords expire, that type of thing. But you may not think that user account security is very complicated or it's that much of a deal. Well, the thing is, over the years, it has become more and more important, especially for IT professionals, especially for people that are going to be implementing the systems for their clients. Now, when I started in the IT field, back in the 90s, really for user account security, you only had to worry about two things. You had to worry about user accounts on local computers. So if somebody wanted to log into a local computer, you had to understand how the security worked on that. And if the company had a domain controller, you had to understand domain controller security issues for user accounts. That's really all you had to worry about for user accounts. So you had the local computer and you had the domain controller. Maybe somebody was using Yahoo Mail or Gmail wasn't even around back then. One of those webmail clients, but that was maybe. And frankly, nobody thought those things were very secure anyway. So no really secure crap was stored on those systems. But that's all you had to worry about: the local computer and the domain controller. Well, now in the age of cloud computing, of diversified applications and services, user account security is more and more and more important, because user account security is what is going to keep your data, your documents, your pictures, your statistics, etc. secure from hackers and people that may want to do you harm. So like I say, back in the old days, you may log into your local computer, you may log into the domain controller, that's all you had to worry about. Well, now you may log into your local computer and you may log in to your domain controller, and you may log in to your statistics account, and you may log in to Salesforce, and you may log in to some customized web app that somebody developed for you, and you may log in to the bank account for your business. Now, instead of worrying about one or two systems that you have to log into, the average person may be logging into 10 or 15 systems in a given day. For the work I do, in a given day, I probably log into 15 to 20 different systems that do different things. Now that there are so many systems out there, you really have to understand how user account security works in order to try to protect those systems from nefarious people that may try to do harm to your business, steal your information, etc. The thing to understand with all user account security is that most of it works off the same basic principles. So Windows user account security has the same principles as email account security, has the same principles as QuickBooks Online security. They all use the basic same security concepts to try to secure user accounts. So if you understand the theory of how you're supposed to try to control user accounts, it will make it easier to secure all these different accounts you have all over the web and in your business. So today we're going to be talking about usernames. So eli.etherton at eli.thecomputerguy.com. We're going to talk about login names. So this is the name that you actually use to log into your account. We're going to be talking about passwords, and we are going to talk about securing sessions. These are the things that come together to form the basis of user account security. So give me a second to put a few things together, and then we'll dive into this class, user account security theory. So the first thing that we should talk about is usernames and login names, because this is a very important component for protecting your systems, protecting your web applications from hackers trying to get into them. Now the first key to using usernames or login names to try to protect your systems is to rename default accounts for any of the systems that you have up and running. So this is an age-old security practice going way back to Windows NT and before, where when you set up a Windows NT server or a Windows server of any type, the first account that is created is the administrator account. The administrator account is the administrator account for the entire computer. It is the root account for the entire computer. It's always created. Well, so the username for the administrator account by default is administrator, and then the password is whatever you decide to plug in. Well, back in the day, and how people still do this with real servers, is remember, if somebody is trying to log in to a user account, they need two pieces of information. They need a username, and then they need the corresponding password for the username. So if they know what the username is, they already have half the information they need to hack your server or to hack your accounts. So what you can do is rename these default accounts. So let's say administrator here. Now, if I want to protect my systems so people try not to hack the administrator account, I may rename the administrator account to Billy Bo Bob. So the administrator account is no longer called the administrator account. The administrator account is now called Billy Bo Bob. So if I, as the administrator, want to administer the server or administer the service, I would log in as Billy Bo Bob and then whatever the password is. Now, hackers are not just going to think off the top of their head that I'm going to have a administrator user account called Billy Bo Bob. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be sitting there plugging in the username administrator and then trying to figure out what password you might have put in. So you do administrator, maybe it's a phone number, maybe it's the address, maybe it's a date of birth. But they're going to be trying to log in as the administrator. Well, you rename the administrator to Billy Bo Bob, so no matter what password they plug in for the administrator account, they will never be able to log in because the username is now Billy Bo Bob and they don't realize it. So the first thing you can do for usernames and login names is simply rename the default user accounts that are created in whatever system that you are using. Remember, this user account security, we're not just talking about Windows, we're not just talking about Linux, we're not just talking about Gmail or Premier apps or any of that. We're talking about all the different services that you may be logging into. So the first thing you can do is rename the default accounts. This is an incredibly good idea. Like I say, you just come up with a new name and I don't know, unless you put it out there on a bulletin board service, no hacker is going to be able to figure this out. Now the next thing to realize with user account security is I talk about username and login name. I suppose the login name should actually be login username. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, what you should realize is when you log into a computer, you know, it says, give me your username and give me your password. So you put in, you know, whatever username here, Billy Bo Bob, right? Now, when you create this login name, many times this will be the default username that is presented to the rest of the world. So if you create an account, let's say at Hotmail, and you create a login name of Billy Bo Bob, then your email address, let's say at Hotmail, would be Billy Bo Bob at hotmail.com. So your login username and your username become the same thing by default. Now, what is the problem here? The problem here is now if somebody is trying to hack your account, one, they know what service you're using, Hotmail, so they know what service to try to hack, and then because this is the default option, they also know what your username is. So they know I'm going to now hack Hotmail with the username of Billy Bo Bob, and now all I have to do is figure out the password. So they know the service you're using, they know the username you're using, and now they're going to try to figure out what kind of password you're using, you know, using whatever kind of hacking tools they use. Well, just because this is the default setting does not mean that's what you always have to do. Especially in the Windows world and a lot of the server worlds, you can have a different login username and username. So what you can do is you can create a login username of X132ZX, I don't know, B, And this corresponds to eli.etherton at Eli the Computer Guy.com. So now this is going to be different upon whatever application, whatever server or service you are using. But you can create a login username that has nothing to do with the username that the rest of the world is going to see. So again, let's say somebody is trying to hack my accounts. They're going to go down and they're going to see this eli.etherton. So they're going to assume this is my login username. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to use this login username with whatever password they think will get them into the system. Well, if my login username is actually x132zxb, well, then they're never going to be able to get into the account because because that's not my actual username. So the important thing is, this is especially, like I used to do this a lot with Windows Exchange servers. So somebody can log in with one name, but then their email address that gets sent out to the rest of the world will look entirely different. So the login username and the username that the rest of the world is going to see do not have to be the same thing. Again, this is a very good way to secure your systems. Now finally, so we've talked about renaming default accounts, very big deal. And we've talked about creating different login names versus usernames. Again, very big deal. With that last part, it will all depend upon the systems or services that you are using. Like I say, in Windows you can do it, in Linux you can do it. If you're using Google Apps, I don't know if you can do it there. It all depends upon whatever service you're using, but it is something to look at. So your login name can be different than the name given out to the rest of the world. Now the last thing that's very important is whether or not the user name will show up in the login box when an application first opens up. So whether it is a desktop computer and when it first boots up, you come to the Windows login screen, the question is, will the person's login name be in the box already filled out? So again, whether it's a Windows computer, whether it's your bank account service, whether it's QuickBooks, etc., you do not want your username showing up automatically, because remember, if a hacker has this username, then he has half the information to try to hack your account. So the last way you try to secure your accounts using your username is don't have your username displayed automatically when a login box pops up. Again, in Windows, you can go into the settings and make that happen. With any of the web services out there, you can just uncheck a box or whatever for whether the login name will show up. But realize, an office cleaner could be coming through the office, turn on your computer and see what the login is there. Again, somebody trying to hack or break in. If they can pull up this username, they have half the information to try to hack into your account. So this is the first part for user account security theory, is securing the username and the login username for your accounts. So the next thing that we need to talk about is password security theory. Now this is something, if you read any security book, they're going to go on about this for a long, long time. So we're not going to waste a lot of time on password security theory because you probably already heard it before, but we will go over it to make sure you really understand what is going on. Now the first thing that we need to talk about when we're talking about password security theory is password complexity. Basically, this is a very incredibly stupidly simple concept. The idea is the more complex you or your users make your passwords, the less chance there is that some hacker out there is going to be able to guess what your password is. If you make your password the name of your dog and it's in all lowercase, somebody can probably figure it out. If you make it the name of your wife in all lowercase, somebody can probably figure it out. The easier it is for you to remember, the easier it is to be hacked. One of the other problems accounts with very simple passwords is the simpler your password is, the easier it is for people to remember. Now me, especially as a technician, I would go to a lot of people's offices. I would hear a lot of passwords. And a lot of people were surprised that a year after the last time I had been to their office, I still remembered their password. Well, the reason is because their password was so darn simple, it was pretty easy to remember. So the simpler you make the password, the more chance there is that somebody in the office will overhear what your password is. Somebody in the office will be able to guess what your password is. Remember, when you're dealing with hackers, everybody's always worried about all these people on the internet trying to come in and destroy your server and hack you from China. The reality is the person most likely to do the most amount of damage to your business is a fellow employee. Employees are the ones that cause the most havoc on all computer systems in businesses. It's just how it is. Whether it is an irate employee that is about to get fired, so they decide to try to delete as much crap as possible, whether it is somebody competing with another employee, so they want to make themselves look good or the other person look bad, so they delete all the other person's email. Just remember that the person most likely, the people that you have to worry about, are actually your employees. I'm not trying to be pessimistic on this. It's just kind of like one of those fact of life things. So the simpler you make your password, the more chance there is that your fellow office workers are actually going to remember what your password is, be able to guess it, and then just do all kinds of nasty damage to you. So the first thing when you're thinking about password complexity is that your password should be at least 8 characters long. This is just kind of like the standard. 8 to 20 characters long is what people use in security. The problem is with 20 characters is probably the most secure password that you're ever going to need, but you're also actually going to have to remember this massive thing. So that can be a real pain in the butt. 8 is usually good. Then with those 8 characters, you should put in lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and numbers at the minimum. So you mix up what's in that password. Now, what most people do is, let's say, Billy Bo Bob 1. This is what most people use for a password. So they come up with a name in their head. They make the first letter uppercase, because you need an uppercase, and then they put a 1 at the end. Now, of course, this is more secure than just having all lowercases, but not that much more secure because people can probably guess what this is. If you're going to use something simple, try to mix up where the capital letters and all that are. So instead of making the first letter in your password capital, maybe you do B, I, and then you do L, then lowercase l, uppercase y, b, let's say O, and then do 1b, something like that. So you mix up the upper and lowercase letters and where the number sits in this password. That will make it harder for people to try to figure out or remember. Like I say, if you do uppercase B, this right here is what everybody does. This is what 98% of the population does, and it's incredibly easy to hack. Because if you can figure out what this part of the password is, then all you do is you make the first letter uppercase and you put a 1 at the end and you're done. You've hacked the account. Whereas if you do something like this, this is just a mess all the way around. So this is something that you should be looking at with password complexity. And like I say, whenever I have anybody do passwords, most of the time, I tell them, don't make the first letter the capital. If you're going to put a capital in there, I don't know, make the B over here the capital. Mix it up. Don't make it the first thing, and don't put 1 at the end. Everybody puts 1 at the end. So that's the first thing when dealing with password security. 8 to 20 characters. Mix it up, and you should be good. Now, the next thing is that you should have a system for routinely changing the password for your accounts. Now, I was in one of these security seminars, and the head of the seminar said, approximately 90% of the population uses the exact same password for all of their service and computer accounts. So the password they use on Gmail is the password they use on the domain controller, is the password they use for QuickBooks, etc. You do not want this. Every single account that you use should have its own password. So QuickBooks should have a password. Gmail should have its own password, et cetera, et cetera. Because if somebody can figure out what password you use for QuickBooks, and you use the same one for Gmail, and you use the same one, yada yada down the line, then they can now hack all of those accounts very easily. If you use a different password for every single service you use, then even if a hacker can compromise one account, they're not compromising every darn account you have. This is something that's very important. And then with that every account you should have a different password. You should change your passwords fairly regularly. I would say every 30 days. The reason is because if you keep passwords around longer than 30 days, the chances that somebody is going to guess it, figure out what it is, hack your account, etc., exponentially go up. If you change your password every 30 days, worst case scenario, they can get into your account for 30 days, and then you change your password, and now they no longer can get into your account. The big thing, and this is what when I talk about security, there's a difference between what people think security is about and what the real world security is about. Now, the reason why it's important to try to shut hackers out of your accounts is because many times hackers are not trying to damage or disrupt your systems. You may not realize the hacker has compromised your QuickBooks or your Gmail, etc. They may be just sitting there and reading all of your emails. Let's say you have a competitor. I know here in Baltimore I had a lot of clients that had nasty, evil competitors. So the competitors, if they could hack into their competitor's email account, they may not want to delete anything. They may not want to screw with anything. They just want to get all the contact information. They just want to read every single email that goes through. If you're bidding on contracts, they're bidding on a contract, you're bidding on a contract. Well, if you can read the CEO's email of your competitor and see what he's sending back and forth, then you may be able to lowball the bid. So you can see, hey, look, my competitor has just said that they're going to submit a bid for $1 million. So I'm going to submit a bid for $975,000. See, that is the kind of thing that can happen when hackers get into your account. Remember, hacking is not always about damaging systems. A lot of times it's about seeing what's going on. It's about siphoning information. Information technology, good or bad. So what you want to do is, again, make sure every single service account you use has a different password, and then change it, like I say, every 30 days. If you change it every 30 days, then when you do change it, all the hackers, if they've gotten into your accounts, will get shut out of your accounts. This is a pretty important thing. So that's the basic concept of password security. We talked about password complexity again, and that's something that almost everybody talks about. 8 characters long, use uppercase, use lowercase, use numbers, etc. The main thing I would tell you is just don't make the first letter the only capital in a password. That's what everybody does, and don't just put a 1 at the end. That's what everybody does. Throw some of that stuff in the middle. The next thing, as I said again and again and again, use different passwords for all your accounts, and I would say change them every 30 days. This is a really important thing. If you need a book, I have a little book for all of my passwords. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You have a little book, or if you have something in your wallet to keep track of all these passwords, because if you get 20 passwords, that's a lot of passwords to remember, especially if you're changing it every 30 days. Do that, but that will be secure. That will keep your account secure, as long as nobody steals your password book, I guess. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about is securing your accounts through session security. So what is session? So sessions are the connections between your computer and whatever server is providing you the service. This may be the domain controllers in a Windows environment. This may be the Gmail server. This may be QuickBooks. This may be any one of those services out there. But the main thing to understand is whether you are using Windows, whether you're using Linux, whether you're using QuickBooks, etc., you can put in session security to try to protect your accounts from being hacked, and it's very important to do. Now, one of the first things that you can do to try to protect your accounts, this is one of the easiest things that you can normally do, is you can have time of day security. What this means is that you have whatever user accounts only available, you can only log into them during certain times of the day. This is a very useful thing within Windows servers, Windows domain controllers. You can do this pretty easily, and depending on what other software you're doing, you should be able to do it also. Basically, within like a Windows server, you can say, I want my administrative staff to be able to log into their accounts between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. If they're logged into their accounts past 6 p.m., they will be automatically logged off their accounts. It'll be forced logged off. So why you do this is if you have administrative staff or if you have hourly staff, they are not going to be doing work at midnight. They should never be doing work at midnight. But somebody that might be trying to do work at midnight is a hacker. So what you do is you set it up so the only time the user account is available to be logged in is during normal business hours. If it's after these business hours, nobody can try to log into the account. That way, it secures the account from somebody at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock, etc., trying to hack into the systems. This is very useful. Like I say, the hackers aren't always from China. It might be the cleaning crew. So you have a cleaning crew coming in at 10 p.m. every night. They have access to all the local computers. They have access to all the systems. So well, they decide that, hey, maybe if they steal a little bit of information, they can sell it to your competitor. Well, they go in, they try to log in, no matter what username or password they use, they will not be able to log into the systems because the systems have been locked by time of day. So time of day is a very important thing for trying to secure user accounts using sessions. The next thing that you should look at, and this is very big for web services, is length of session. What this is how long will the session stay open if there is inactivity. So, somebody sits down to, let's say, QuickBooks, and they're typing in invoices and all that. Now, let's say they get up and they go to the bathroom. Now, if somebody stops typing in, to an application, you do want that application to be available for a while. But the question is, how long do you want it to be available? Now, what happens with secure software is when you stop, typing in, when you stop interacting with the application, it will log you off after a certain period of time. It might be 10 minutes, it might be 30 minutes, etc. The reason is because if you don't do that, let's say, again, the accountant is sitting there typing all the information into QuickBooks. Let's say he gets up, he decides to go to the bathroom. He doesn't lock his computer, doesn't log off because he figures he'll be back. Well, on the way back from the bathroom, he runs into somebody he needs to talk to. Well, that person has an invoice he needs to work on. Suddenly, he has a lot of stuff to do. All of a sudden, the entire day has gone by. He hasn't realized, wow, he used so much time. He goes, grabs his coat, and he leaves. Now, if the length of session is not set to automatically log off, now that QuickBooks account is sitting open for anybody in the world to go into and look at accounts, create checks, do whatever it is they want to do. So what you need to worry about is controlling the length of session. What you're going to have to decide is depending on what your users, your clients are doing. Do you put it at 10 minutes? Do you put it on 30 minutes? Do you put it at 60 minutes? This is a very common thing, like I say, within web applications. If you're dealing with Windows, you can go to the settings where for password control, have the screensaver come up after 30 minutes, require a password. That's how you can deal with this. The other thing to remember with a length of session is even if the application is closed, so let's say you have, let's say, Gmail. You have Gmail open, right? You're reading Gmail. You go, I'm done with Gmail. And you close Gmail. So you actually close the Gmail, the Gmail application. That does not necessarily mean the session is closed. So you close the Gmail application. You walk away to go to the bathroom, have lunch, etc. Well, what can happen is if the length of session isn't set to terminate that session after a length of time, secretary can come in, hacker can come in, anybody can come in, they can go to your computer, they can reopen Gmail, and all they have to do is go to like gmail.com, and then your email account is sitting right in front of them. Why? Because the session itself was never closed. You closed the window, but you did not close the session. So that's another reason the length of the session can be very important. Now, one of the things you can do, especially when you're doing web apps, is you can also discriminate based on location of the session. Again, within the Windows domain world, you can do this using organizational units and kinds of stuff. But mainly with web applications, let's say you create a web application that you want all of your employees to be able to get to. Now, your employees all live, let's say they live around here and they live in Maryland, so you want them to be able to get to that web application. Well, the thing is, if you put it up on the web, most people think, well, then that means if people are in California, people from California can try to hack into your web application. People from Tennessee can try to hack into your web application. People from China can try to hack into your web application. Well, one thing you can do is you can secure your web application by geographic location. So you can say within the web application, if it's set up, I only want internet users coming from Maryland to be able to access this web application. You can even restrict this further into things like IP addresses, depending on how much control you have of your web app, to say, I only want this series of IP addresses to be able to gain access to this web application. So this is a good way to secure the session. So the session is the communication between the computer and the server. What happens is when the computer connects the server is going to say, hey, where are you? The computer is then going to say where it's at. So if it says Maryland, then the server will say, oh, okay, here's the web application. If the computer says Texas, the server will say, session cannot be completed. You're in the wrong location. So this is a way that you can secure your web applications. Again, even if they're up on the web, even if they're sitting in a data center, I don't know, in the middle of Russia, still you can say, in that data center in the middle of Russia, I only want users who reside in Maryland to be able to access this account. So this is one of the ways that you can secure the sessions. Now the final way you can secure your sessions is through a token of some kind. This is becoming more important. In the web world, more and more people trying to access these web applications, is you can have something on the computer to denote to the server that the computer should have access, again, to the web application. This might be one of those little dongles or those like those little USB keys you plug into the computer. So you may plug that into the computer. Your computer will talk to the server. The server will say, give me information off that little USB dongle. Then, if that dongle is there, the computer will then allow this client to have access to the services. This is something that gets used nowadays. So that can be very useful because that means only the people that have that little USB key or dongle are able to get onto your system. So these are the different ways that you can secure your user accounts using sessions. Again, one of the easiest, best ways is through time of day. Basically, you say, people with these user accounts can log in at business hours. If it's after business hours, they can't log in. That's kind of like a no-brainer. I mean, really, everybody in the world should do that. If everybody did that, the world would be a lot more secure for computers. Then it's length of session. Again, a very important thing. Sessions should time out if users are not interacting with the computer or the application. You have to decide, based upon your users, how long that should be. Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it 5 minutes? I can't tell you. But if the user isn't playing with the session, they should be logged out. They should be logged off of that session. The next thing with that length of session that becomes very important is, remember, the session is different than the window that you use to interact with the server. So you can close, like I say, you can close your Gmail window, but the session is still active. So if somebody comes back to your computer and opens up another window to Gmail, they will be looking at your email account, because although you closed the window, you did not close the session. That's one of the important things with sessions that they always try to tell you that you should know, is whether you're using online banking, whether you're using online QuickBooks, whether you're using Gmail, Hotmail, whatever. Always click that little log off button. That log off button manually kills the session itself. Like I say, the session is a thing that you have to worry about for security here, because if that session is still open, somebody can just reopen a window and start accessing whatever you had open beforehand. So that's the basic concept of using sessions for security. So that was a class on user account security theory. Like I say, I hope you got something out of this. Nowadays, user account security theory is more important than it has ever been in the past. Like I say, years ago when I started in the computer industry, you had the local computer login information and you had the domain controller login information. So whether you used Windows domain controllers or you used NetWare domain controllers, those were the only things that you had to worry about. Now, in modern business and modern life, the average business user may have 10, 20, 30 different accounts that they have to log into on any given day to get their job done. Google accounts, QuickBooks accounts, hosted email, hosted Outlook accounts. All of these things are now hosted, and so each one of them has its own usernames, has its own password, has its own sessions. So the better you understand the concepts behind securing these user accounts, the better you will do at looking at these services that you're using and trying to secure them. Like I say, why this is a theory class versus me sitting down in an actual computer and showing you how to do it is the options really depend on what service you're using. Gmail has security options that hosted Outlook doesn't have. QuickBooks has security options that a custom application may not have. It all really depends on whatever product it is you have purchased and you are using. We talked about the username and login name and how they are different, and that's very important. If you can make the login username different than the username shown to the world, that really can secure your systems, because like I say, when the login information, it has two parts. It has a username and it has a password. If the people don't know, if the hackers have no idea what the username is, it makes their life twice as difficult. So, and they may be using, like I say, eli.etherton to try to log in, when really it's XYZXBV4. So they're going to sit there for years trying to use eli.etherton, and it's not going to work for them. We talked about password complexity. You should have at least 8 digits or 8 characters in a password, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. The main thing that I will warn you and I will tell you is what 98, 99, probably about 100% of the population does, is they come up with a really simple password, and then they make the first letter uppercase and they make the last letter or last character 1. That's what everybody does. Don't do that. If at the very least, make one of the middle characters the uppercase character and make the last number 546 or something. Just do something different than everybody does. Don't use your dog's name, your wife's name, your cat's name, etc. People really do that, and it's a bad thing. Remember, the simpler your password is, the more likely it is that people are going to remember it. And remember, your enemy is most likely not the hacker in China. Your enemy is most likely the person sitting right beside you that would really like your job. They really want a pay raise, so if they can prove that you're a complete idiot, they might get promoted to your position. It's sad, but it's true. The next thing is to remember to change your passwords routinely. Again, I would say change your passwords about every 30 days. The reason is, again, everybody thinks hackers are there just to destroy and wreak havoc. A lot of times hackers get into accounts simply to collect information. They're doing data mining just like the IT industry does. So like I say, a competitor hacks into your Gmail account, and now they are seeing all the information going between your employees and project managers, etc. If you're competing on a bid, they may see that you're going to put in the bid at $1 million, so they'll put in the bid at $980,000, and they win the bid, and you have How did they do that? Well, the reason is because they could just sit there and read all of your information, if you're getting new accounts, etc. The final thing with passwords is use different passwords for all of your accounts. Again, those 15 to 30 accounts all should have different passwords. The reason is because if somebody can guess the password for one account, and it's the same for all your accounts, now not only have you compromised QuickBooks, but you've compromised Outlook, you've compromised your bank account, you've compromised yada, yada, yada. This can be a real problem. And again, the problem gets worse because a lot of times people use the same password both for their business accounts and their personal accounts. So let's say your office environment is very, very, very secure, no viruses, no hackers, etc. But you go home and you're using the computer that your teenage son was looking at porn at a little while ago. Well, it's got viruses and malware and all that crap. Well, that computer at home can now try to collect all your username and password information, send it off to the hackers, and now the hackers can try to use that information to compromise your business system. So all of your accounts should have different passwords. I know it's a pain in the butt. Like I say, I have a little book. It's not a bad thing to do. The final way to secure user accounts is through session security. So session security is a communication between the client computer and the server. So whether this is a domain controller, whether this is a Gmail server, whether it's a QuickBooks server, you're seeing at your computer goes to talk to the server. That's the start of the session, and you can secure that session so that people can't access services that they're not supposed to be able to access. The first way you can do this is time of day. This is really the easiest way to secure user accounts is basically you say this user account can only be accessed during our business hours. So again, if the cleaning crew tries to come in or some Chinese hacker tries to hack the account at midnight, well, at midnight, the account is disabled, so no matter what they do, they will not be able to hack that account. The next thing that's very important is limiting the length of sessions, the timeout variable. So how long will the session stay open if somebody is not interacting with it? So you've probably seen this with Windows computers where after 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, you'll get a screensaver, and when you hit a key to get out of the screensaver, it'll ask you for your login information again. That's basically a timeout of the session. This is very important also because remember, just because you close a web browser window does not mean you've closed the session. So you can say, I'm done with Gmail, I'm done with QuickBooks, I don't want to look at this anymore. You click the X on the browser, that closes the browser, you go home for the day, the cleaning person comes in, your competitor comes in, etc., sits at the computer, reopens Gmail, and the computer doesn't even ask you for your login credentials because the session is still open. So that's the thing, is make sure that session times out, after a reasonable amount of time. The other thing, always to tell all of your clients, your users, is always to hit the little log off button in whatever web application that they are using. That log off button manually terminates the session so somebody can't hack into the session later. The next thing you can do is you can do location filtering for sessions. So this is, if you're dealing with web applications, etc., you can say, I only want users that are in Maryland to be able to access these web services. If somebody tries to hack the account from California, Texas, etc., they are not going to be able to get into the web service because they're simply filtered out. The server will look at where they're located, where their internet connection is located. It'll say, you're in Texas, I'm not going to deal with you. Or one of the more secure way, or the most secure way, is you can actually restrict based on IP addresses. So let's say you give all of your employees static IP addresses for their homes. You plug those static IP addresses into that web application, and when somebody tries to log into the web application, it'll look at the IP address that the client has. It'll go, okay, this IP address matches, you're allowed to log in. Or it'll say, this IP address it does not match, and it'll just kill the session. It won't even allow anybody to try to get into it. The final way you can try to secure sessions is, again, through these little tokens or dongles. You plug in a little USB thumb drive, security device, into your computer. The server will ask for information off of that little USB key. If the USB key there is there, it'll allow the session to happen. If it is not there, it will not allow the session to happen. So these are the ways that you can secure your user accounts through sessions. Again, this is very, like I say, it's very important. Think about what I'm talking about, because again, we're not just dealing with Windows local computers or Windows domain controllers. We're dealing with domain controllers and Gmail and hosted Outlook and hosted Azure. Even Windows, Microsoft is putting all of their services online. So with all these services going online, you have to be more and more secure about how your user accounts are secured. Again, back in the good old days, when I started out, you really weren't worried about hackers from China hacking local computers. The only thing that you had to worry about was somebody in the office, hacking computers. Now, if you're using Google Premier apps to do all of your documents, if you're using all these hosted services, that means now people in China can try to hack in and get all of your documents. So you're dealing with a much more risky environment from a security standpoint than you did a few years ago. So understanding user account security, like I say, is really important. So that was a class, User Account Security Theory. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy, over here for everymanit.com, and I look forward to seeing you at the next class.